All right, welcome to this explainer. Let's just dive straight in. I want you to imagine, just for a second, the most complex, bustling, perfectly organized city you can possibly think of. Millions of people moving around, communicating, and working together just to keep the whole place thriving. Well, the biological body? It's basically the ultimate city of life. And today, we're going to explore the absolutely breathtaking architecture that builds it, literally from the ground up.
So get this, you, sitting there right now, are made up of roughly 37 trillion cells. 37 trillion. But what's really wild is that every single one of those cells originated from just one single divided cell. So how on earth does that one little cell organize itself into a perfectly functioning human being, instead of just descending into complete chaos? Well, the secret is all in how those cells group together.
Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. First, we'll look at cells to tissues. Second, plants versus animals. Third, inside plant tissues. Fourth, inside animal tissues. Fifth, joints and the skeletal system. And finally, number 6, we'll look at the incredible superpower of totipotency.
All right, part 1, cells to tissues, the division of labor. You see, nature completely avoids complication by assigning very specific jobs to specific groups. It's a true division of labor. And this brilliantly shows the hierarchy of organization that makes life possible in the first place. Think back to our city analogy for a second. If individual cells are the people, then tissues are entire neighborhoods where people with similar skills all live together. When those neighborhoods combine, they form organs, like the really important buildings, say a hospital or a factory. Then, those organs connect to form organ systems, which are basically the city's infrastructure. And finally, all those systems working perfectly together, that builds the complete organism, the entire city.
So what exactly is a tissue? Simply put, a tissue is a group of similar cells that work together to perform a specific function. Think of a brick wall. One single brick on its own is just a block of clay, right? It really can't do much. But when thousands of those bricks are organized and cemented together, they form a super strong, purposeful wall. In our bodies, that wall is the tissue.
Moving on to part 2, plants versus animals, the great divide. Now, the tissues that make up a giant banyan tree and the tissues that make up you and me are fundamentally different. And it all comes down to our very different lifestyles. Plants are essentially stationary fortresses. They don't run, they don't jump, and because they stay put, they need rigid structural support to stand tall against gravity. That's exactly why their tissues are highly structural, they have thick walls, and get this, they're actually mostly dead at maturity. Animals, on the flip side, are highly mobile machines. We have to bend, squeeze, hunt, and react quickly. Plus, we consume our food instead of just making it from sunlight. So animal tissues absolutely need to be flexible, dynamic, and almost entirely living.
Section 3, inside plant tissues, building the fortress.
Plant tissues are totally focused on building outward and upward, just to survive the elements. To pull that off, plants have a dedicated growth factory made of something called meristematic tissue. These actively dividing cells have large nuclei and no vacuoles. Honestly, they just constantly divide. It's amazing. Apical meristems sit right at the tips, making the plant grow taller and the roots grow deeper. Lateral meristems add layers to the sides. That's what creates those annual rings you see when you cut open a tree trunk. And intercalary meristems are at the base of the nodes. If you've ever wondered why your lawn magically grows right back after you mow it, yeah, you can thank the intercalary meristem for that.
Of course, all that growth means the plant needs water, and that's driven by a process called transpiration. See, the plant has this outer protective tissue called the epidermis, which is often coated in a waxy cuticle to lock in moisture. But it still needs to breathe. So it has these tiny little pores called stomata, guarded by these really fascinating kidney-shaped guard cells. As water evaporates out of these pores, it creates this massive upward pull. That's the transpiration. That literally sucks water all the way from the roots deep in the ground, right up to the canopy.
Now, once those dividing cells finally mature, they turn into permanent supporting tissues, and they have some pretty distinct differences. Parenchyma is soft and thin-walled. It acts like a storage unit for food and water, and in aquatic plants, it even traps air to help them float. Collenchyma has a chemical called pectin in its corners, which gives it this flexible strength. This is exactly why a coriander stem will bend all the way over in the wind but won't snap. And finally, sclerenchyma. This is made of dead cells with heavily lignified walls. It provides pure, rock-hard strength. If you think about the sheer, unbeatable toughness of a coconut husk, that right there is sclerenchyma in action.
Then we've got the complex permanent tissues, which are basically the plant's massive transport highways.
Xylem acts like a bunch of hollow, upward-facing straws, made up of mostly dead cells called tracheids and vessels. Its whole job is to transport water up from the roots. Phloem, though, is a highly dynamic, living network. It uses sieve tubes and companion cells to actively transport the sugars made during photosynthesis both up and down the plant, delivering food to wherever it's needed most.
All right, Section 4. Inside animal tissues, the mobile machine.
Leaving the stationary fortress of the plant world behind, let's step into the dynamic, moving world of animals. There are 4 primary types of animal tissues we need to know. Epithelial tissue is the covering that protects us and lines our internal organs. Connective tissue supports and transports materials around the body. Muscular tissue is what allows us to physically move. And nervous tissue, that's the high-speed electrical wiring that controls the whole operation. So consider this our roadmap for human anatomy.
Let's start with connective tissue. One of the sources we looked at featured a teacher giving this absolutely incredible analogy that I just have to share with you. Think about blood, which is actually a fluid connective tissue with a liquid plasma matrix. Now imagine that blood is the country of India. The white blood cells, the WBCs, are the brave soldiers of the Indian Army. The harmful substances and infections, those are terrorists trying to invade. If the WBC soldiers are strong, they neutralize the threat and protect the country. And all of this is happening right alongside the oxygen-carrying red blood cells and the platelets that act like a repair crew to patch up any physical breaches.
Okay, I want you to do a quick test with me. Seriously, right now, clench your fist. All right, now blink your eyes. You just perfectly demonstrated 2 highly coordinated tissues working together. By clenching your fist, you voluntarily activated striated muscular tissue. But by blinking, or even just digesting your last meal, smooth, involuntary muscles did all the work behind the scenes. And here's the crazy part. Neither of those movements would have happened without the lightning-fast, rapid-fire commands sent by your nervous tissue in a matter of milliseconds. And while we're on the topic of muscles, think about this staggering number. 100,000. That is the number of times your cardiac muscle beats in a single day. Found only in your heart, this specialized muscle tissue has what I'd call the ultimate biological superpower. It rhythmically, involuntarily contracts for an entire human lifetime without ever experiencing fatigue. Honestly, it's mind-blowing.
Part 5. Joints and the skeletal system, the framework of motion. So we know muscles create force, but translating that force into, say, the incredibly graceful movement of an Indian classical dancer, that requires a solid framework. And this brings us to some very specific connective tissues. I've got a fantastic, really handy memory trick for you here. Tendons connect your muscles to your bones. They're what transmit the pulling force. Ligaments, on the other hand, connect bone to bone, which stabilizes your skeleton. So remember, tendon is muscle to bone, ligament is bone to bone. Lock that one away, it's super helpful. Here's another quick physical interaction for you. Go ahead and touch the tip of your nose, or fold the top of your ear. You feel how it totally holds its shape, but still has that flexible bounce to it? That is cartilage. It's a softer, much more flexible connective tissue that acts like a crucial shock absorber at the ends of our hard calcium and phosphorus-rich bones. It keeps them from painfully grinding together.
Now, the places where those bones actually meet are our joints, and they are perfect examples of the mechanical engineering inside our bodies. The form perfectly matches the function. The ball and socket joint in your shoulder gives you this amazing 360-degree range of motion. The hinge joint in your knee is literally like a door. It only opens and closes in one direction, which gives you stability when you walk. Your pivot joint in your neck is what lets you shake your head no. And the fixed joints in your skull, well, they don't move at all, because their one and only job is to form a completely unbreakable safe to protect your brain.
Finally, Section 6, the superpower of totipotency, coming full circle.
To bring this explainer full circle, right back to the sheer power of a single cell, we have to talk about a literal biological superpower, totipotency. Back in 1958, this scientist named F.C. Stewart did something amazing. He took a single, fully mature, specialized phloem cell from a regular carrot. He put it in a nutrient bath, and against all odds, that highly specialized cell de-differentiated. It basically forgot its specific job, started to multiply, and eventually grew into a completely new, fully formed carrot plant. This single discovery is the absolute foundation of modern agriculture and plant tissue culture. It's the reason we can grow massive amounts of disease-resistant crops from just a tiny handful of cells today.
Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought to ponder. If a single mature carrot cell can be coaxed into regrowing an entirely new plant, will we ever be able to unlock that exact same superpower to regenerate complex human organs? I mean, we're already seeing some incredible medical breakthroughs using stem cells for things like bone marrow transplants to fight leukemia. The tissues in action inside of us are an absolute marvel of nature's engineering. But the real question is, just how far can we push the boundaries of this biological architecture in the future? Thank you so much for exploring the city of life with me.